Welcome to the Well-Rounded Retirement Podcast with John and Jim from CRIS Financial. In this podcast, we help you take a well-rounded approach to retirement planning so you can retire with complete certainty. If you're looking for proven and straightforward retirement advice, ranging from how to protect your assets to how to spend with confidence, this show is for you.
Hello and welcome to Well-Rounded Retirement with Jim Donewald and John Glowes from CRIS Financial. And audience, here's the thing. I am so excited about today's show because we're talking about something that's near and dear to my heart. Jim, I know that we're going to be talking about women today. More specifically, let's get more specific so I don't get myself in trouble. I've been working with financial advisors and insurance agents and people in the financial industry, let's just call it a big industry, for many years. And I know one of the issues that has been reoccurring, especially with financial advisors, is that it's predominantly male in the industry as far as financial advisors. And secondly, most of those male financial advisors have a tremendously difficult time relating to women or even talking to them because they don't know how to do that. And I know from experience in our conversations that you guys work with a lot of women, not only married women, but divorced and widowed or those that choose to be single. So you have a large amount of your book of business, a large amount of your clientele are women. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, thanks. To me, it sounds kind of funny because you see this big push, and I see, seminars just for women, and what about this, and what about that, just for the ladies. And our firm has, like you said, we've always worked with a lot of female clients, and I don't know what it is. I mean, I can tell you, in my past, I've had a couple of female bosses. I don't know if my mom just raised me right, but we have always attracted a fair amount of female clients. And it's funny. I related to a story a long time ago when we were doing this podcast. When I was growing up, I tell the story of we were having the roof put on our house, and I was watching the guys, carry the shingles up to the roof. And my dad said, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm watching the guys carry the shingles up to the roof. He said, "Don't watch, start carrying the shingles up to the roof." And, so that just got me involved immediately. And my mom very much the same way. She'd be cooking in the kitchen and, "Why don't you give me a hand?" So I think help is help, and I don't, I'm just looking to help people. So that's what we do. And quite frankly, the fact that we have a large percentage of female clients, I don't know really what to attribute to that, luck or just, like I said, just giving them the information that they're looking for. So, I find it very easy for me to relate to anybody because I've struggled, I've been successful, I've had problems, I've had success. And so because of that, I find it very easy to relate to people. Plus, it's very easy to relate to whatever situations they're having, whether it's a lot of success and they've got all this extra money, or they're struggling and they need help with a budget. So I don't know. For me, my mind just works that way.
Yeah, and it sounds to me like right off the bat, the story that you just told about your parents, they taught you empathy in a way, get in there and help out carry the shingles. I mean, that wasn't your job, but your dad prompted you to get up there and help. And your mom just involving you in the learning process, it taught you great communication skills. And that's one of the things that's lacking. I think that any audience member, and guys, I'm not going to sit here and just completely bash on us, but let's be honest. If you're not a woman, you don't understand what it's like to be a woman or how you're viewed by the male gender, and especially people in finance. A lot of times they don't talk to them because they just they're not comfortable addressing them. And that was part of the battle when I would work with offices that did not do well or did not have a good track record with working with women. It was mainly just the communication skills, what questions to ask, how to listen better. That's a huge hurdle. And Jim, I know that you have done extensive, not research, but self-training on how to be a better listener, how to engage somebody, both men and women. So I think that's a big piece of it. And without having those communication skills, people are just lacking and they just don't understand. And then there's a huge lack of trust because if you're not going to talk to me or you're not going to answer my questions or you're kind of avoiding me and looking just at my husband or just at my father when I'm standing right here, that's bothersome to me. As a father of a daughter, that bothers me. I want her to be bold enough to ask the questions. I want the person that she's asking to answer her, not look at me and give me an answer, which has happened time and time again.
Yeah, well, I think you're 100% right, and I do think listening is a huge part. And by the way, I've been married twice, so this wasn't a lesson I knew my whole life. You still have to learn,
Yeah.
but it's all part of it. But that's okay. I'm a better person for it, and isn't that what we're all striving towards? I like to give women the kudos because they tend to be in the couples. Once again, I'm speaking generalities here, more conservative. Well, I'm by nature more conservative, so we kind of relate to those topics. And I also think, one of the reasons too is just let's look at some of the basics. Women typically are going to outlive us. I mean, that's probably the nature of it. And financial planning is important for everybody to get what they want as long as they're alive. And we don't know, how long they're going to be alive. As a matter of fact, I always like to sit down, whether it's a couple or a single or whatever, and I'll get my notepad out and I'll say, tell me when you're going to die. And they look at me like, what?
Yeah.
And I normally get a big laugh out of it. Well, I could put together a great plan if you can tell me exactly when you're going to die. Well, nobody has that information. So, we need to plan for this. And being the party that's typically the one left standing. I mean, I see a lot more, older ladies than men. And even when they get older, women tend just to age better at the end. I think that's at least been my experience. So, the good news is they live longer. The bad news is they live longer. So they probably should be more concerned. I mean, you're a married man. How do you think?
Oh, I'll tell you, we think very differently about money. She's conservative in many areas, but when it comes to our grandkids, she will spend every penny we have, if possible. But she has been the one that has taken up the mantle of dealing with the household finances for years. And I'm blessed in that fashion because I am not as organized as she is. And I find that among most of my friends, that's kind of how it works as well. And we also know the statistics that it's 80% of the buying decisions for the home are the women. And we're not talking just groceries. We're talking cars. If we go look at cars, I am told what she wants and we agree on something, but I'm going to lean on her because I want her to be happy and she's going to drive it more, most likely, so on and so forth. I may be the one dealing with the salesperson. I may be the one talking and closing the deal, but it's because she told me to. That's all there is to it. And I'm okay with that. I like that because it's a shared responsibility.
Well, I think that's it. It's the partnership exactly. That's my relationship. I do the checkbook. My wife doesn't. John Glowaz, my partner, his wife does the checkbook. He does it. Who cares as long as somebody's doing it? Like you say, you're sharing this responsibility. But the one thing that you said there that I really do agree with is I think women think about money a little bit differently. They're much more willing to help and sacrifice their own finances. And that's a conversation we have from time to time. It's their money. It's your money. You can do whatever you want with it. But how is this going to affect you long term? And sometimes, we're all like to be giving, but sometimes, you got to draw the line with, older children, whatever. But these are the things we talk about. I think they're a little more freer. I think men in general are a little more risky. But the same thing comes in. I don't care if you're male, female, married, single. You still have to have a plan. You have to have a path. Most of us don't know where we're going, myself included. You got to come up with a path to follow. That's by having a plan and a process to do so. I mean, you're not. I'm sure in your career arc, you just don't think all of a sudden 65 and all of a sudden the miracle is going to happen. You're going to be retired and there's going to be a boat in the driveway, and you got to figure out how that's going to happen.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring that up because, and I don't know about your marriage or your marriages, depending on which one you're thinking about. But with my wife and I, she is all about today's bills and understands it and budgeting, and she does great. And I will talk to her about, hey, can we afford this? I need to make a repair on this. I'm going to need to buy some tools. How long do I need to wait? Kind of thing. And she'll be able to tell me, okay, yeah, we can do that next month, or no, we're good to go. Go ahead and go to Lowe's. But I'm the one that thinks about long term as far as retirement and so on and so forth, because if it was up to her, and I'm not saying she would spend all the money, but she doesn't think so much about what we're going to be doing in retirement. She's thinking about how can we help our children? How can we help the grandchildren? Can we help pay for school? Can we do these different things? And I'm all about that too, if we can, but I have an eye on the long term so that retirement does happen, because there's a point where I want to be on that boat. We talked about that. And I don't want it to be in my driveway. I'd rather it be in the water. But So that's just how we think about things differently. Have you experienced the same thing, or are you guys kind of on the same page?
I think that's a great way of that was the point I was trying to make. I think that's just a great way of doing it. It's a little more maybe in the now, where a little more waiting and planning, at least from my perspective. And I think that's a great way. It's funny because we look at these different decisions and, who makes them. Personally in my family, we have different decisions that we make, and we're both comfortable with that. So it's not like you're going to do this, I'm going to do that. We have it worked out. I'll give you an example. We're doing a new construction project, and my wife's an interior designer, and the general contractor calls me up and he says, okay, I got to put in 15 outlets, and where do you want them? And my eyes just start spinning in the back of my head. I just hand the phone to my wife. She goes, I need one over here, 3 inches up, 4 feet over. That'll take care of that lamp, this, that. Perfect space planning down to the T. That's what she does. I just had a guest on here. We were talking about IT and help and computer crashing and all this stuff. That's just not what I do. I think we have to embrace the things that we do well, and sometimes it's okay to pay for the things we don't do well. So like I said, my wife, you want her as your general contractor. Me, I'm probably better at balancing your checkbook, but nonetheless, it doesn't make any difference. Nobody's smart or stupid. It's just, here's the things we do well. Here's the things I either prefer not to do or would rather pay for them. And that's a huge part, a huge part of what I do. My clients aren't stupid. Sometimes they've had enough of whatever is going on that they just don't want to deal with it, or they want somebody to manage it or help advise it. I mean, people that come to me are coming to me and coming to our firm because a couple of reasons. Either they can't do it themselves, they want to do it faster, or they want to go down a plan and a path that a million people have been down before that's got a proven track record. And that's what we're here for. I mean, nobody's saying these people can't do it on their own, but maybe we can add something that helps them do it a lot quicker.
All right, so let's get down to brass tacks here, Jim. Let's talk about what women need to be thinking about and the questions they need to be asking of a financial advisor, whether they're single, whether they're married. Let's just go ahead and the husband is sitting in the corner with headphones on. The wife is going to have a conversation just with you, or the single lady's coming in to talk to you. What questions should they be asking, or what things should they be thinking about?
Sure. My questions are, I hate to say it, folks, but they're exactly the same regards to who comes into my office. And the first one is just, what are your financial goals? What are you trying to accomplish? I shouldn't even say financial goals. What are your goals? Maybe it's accumulate a lot of money. Maybe it's not. Okay. Only way we can get there is we have to have clear direction. I'm very good, but I'm not a mind reader. So what are we trying to do? The next thing that I suggest everybody has is emergency funds. Bad things happen to good people all the time. We need to be prepared. It's only an emergency if you're not prepared for it. If you're prepared for it, it's a bummer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It stinks, but we can overcome it. It's an emergency when you're not ready for it and all your money's tied up elsewhere.
What is an emergency fund to you?
Well, an emergency fund to me is a good 6 months of income. If you're not retired and you're retiring, what does it take you to be you? That's what I always ask my clients. What's it cost you to be you? And I would take that times 6. That's a good round number. Now, depending upon how much assets you actually have, you may want to hold more than that. That's fine. Just keep in mind that whatever money we have in the emergency fund, we're really not making money with that. So liquidity has a cost. That's why I don't want to see a ton of money in there. But on the other hand, if you're just one of those people who says, look, I can't sleep at night unless I got X amount sitting there, then, by all means do it. We'll work with you on that. So that's what I think of an emergency fund. Plenty of money, not just the bare minimum.
Yeah, and then if something comes up, I like the 6 months because you think about job loss, what would happen, it takes you a while to get a job, so on and so forth. But the other thing is, a car repair, a major car repair. My wife and I had a $4,000 car repair just this last year, and we did have that in an emergency fund. And then what we did is we focused on replenishing that, right? Because we had to spend that right at one spot. Now it's going to take us a couple months to make sure we can replenish that emergency fund back to where it was. But it covers all those little things, especially if you follow that rule of having 6 months. That's great. So let's go back to paying off debt.
Well, I want to, I was going to say, you actually just follow those rules exactly. You must have been listening to my previous podcast.
Well, I've learned a few things.
I was going to say, but that's just it. Like, I've got a car. I haven't had any payments on it. I own the car outright. I haven't had payments for months. But then you do get those $3,000 and $4,000 repair bills because it's an older car. But it's not a big deal. And then, like you said, you replenish that. So think about that. So now I can take the money out of the market when it's a good time, not as a knee-jerk reaction. Let's just say the market's crashing. That's the same day you have a car wreck. That's unfortunate. So we want to make sure we're good with that. So, paying off debt is another big question. You'd be surprised at my answers. I'm going to say sometimes yes, sometimes no. It depends on the whole situation. I am not for people being 100% debt-free and not having any cash in the bank. I'd rather see you carry some debt and have assets that you can rely on. And I can, that's a private conversation to see where people at. But not all debt is bad. It's not all necessary to pay off. I mean, most people don't like debt. I don't like debt. I don't suggest you carry a lot of it, but there's certain times where it doesn't make sense to pay it off. A mortgage towards the end, everything you're paying is going towards principal at this point. You've already eaten all the interest. I'm not in a hurry to pay that off, if I'm at a good rate. So
interesting. Okay. What else?
Well, you also want to create a plan to invest. If you're not where you want to be, or a few years from retirement, you got to make sure that you're still contributing. This might be another reason we're not paying off all the debt, because rather than put, X amount of money towards the debt, we might want to put it towards growing your portfolio to make sure you can retire in the life and the goals that you've set. And that's real important. And then, do you want to manage that yourself? Do you want help from somebody like our firm to help you with that? I'm big on insurance for obvious reasons. It mitigates risk, and investment in retirement is and can be risky. So I want to make sure that I know or limit my losses as much as I can. I want to make as much money as I can, but I want to limit my losses too. And there again, that's very individual as to how much risk people want to take or don't want to take. But there's insurance comes into play. Besides your house and car and things you own, you can put some insurance on your portfolio, so to speak, and I can show you how to do that. So that's it. We've talked about taxes at huge length. Once again, male, female, Uncle Sam does not care. If you're making money, he's your partner. So that's a huge thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's touch on one other thing, because I know you've spoken about it on previous podcasts, but I think it's worth revisiting, especially on this one, is that a lot of women find themselves, they've been out of the workforce for a number of years because of children, right? They're having children. Maybe they're raising the children at home. Maybe they've gone back to work, but they've still most likely missed some time, which means a lot of times they're not going to have as large of a Social Security check as their husband if he's been working full time for their entire marriage. So what do they need to be considering when it comes to planning, especially with Social Security in the mix?
Yeah, that's a great question. And here's where I'm going to pick on the guys just a little bit. And this is kind of what we were talking about earlier. Is men typically again, tend to be a little more risky. What I mean by that is they're not as concerned with the safety net, and because they die first lots of times, or at least what we've seen is, if they pass away first, they may spend a fair portion of those assets on their own health care, meaning there's not a lot left for the second party. Now, that can go either way. Obviously, the wife can get sick first too, but like I say, typically speaking, that's what we see. So in a case like that, a very real conversation I'm going to have if they're married is, let's not take the Social Security till later, because if you're married and the person passes, the spouse has the choice of the higher Social Security check. So whoever that was, the males or the females, doesn't make any difference. That would be a great cause. If you're single, we have a whole other set of challenges just because the taxes are tougher. It's just tougher. There's a little more planning that needs to be done when you're single. There's simply just not as many options available to you. That's not to say there's not a lot of good choices. You just got to be a little more careful and a little more smarter about how you do it.
Gotcha. All right. I mean, again, I hesitate to make decisions on my own for, the financial future, because of the fact that, number one, I'm married. I shouldn't make them on my own. But, again, there's so many things that you've got to get an expert involved in. So I know we'll wrap this podcast up here in a few minutes, and I want to make sure that we get contact information from you for those that just want to have maybe you guys look over their plan currently, or if they're not working with somebody, then, start to create that plan. But what other advice would you give specifically women? And let's focus on the single women or widowed women at this point. What advice would you give them so that they can secure their financial future in a much more robust way?
Yeah, I think you gotta seek the information. I do find lots of times that they're just a little more passive, I guess. Changes are tough, and I'm not saying you need to make them, and you don't want to make them right when something happens, like somebody passes away or you get a divorce.
Yeah.
But shortly thereafter, you should reevaluate to make sure that the plan that was set up is still viable. Things change all the time. Look at the world we live in. Financial products change, come and go. The market is crazier than ever. So maybe what was set up 10 years ago isn't the right thing. So you got to look at it, and you have to be willing to change. Doesn't mean you need to change necessarily. We always back up our recommendations with math and anything we can to show the clients why we've come to the conclusion we've come to. But like I said, don't be afraid to get those second opinions or the third opinion. If you're in a situation and you're not sure, we want to be sure while you still can make those changes. Health is a big can be a big problem maker if you don't have health care power of attorneys and something happens. You go down these spots very quickly. And unfortunately, men, women, everybody go, I'll deal with it later. There's a lot of that going out there. It just shouldn't be an emergency when you're doing your financial planning because it's important and you need to be focused.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to challenge you now, Jim. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. I know a lot of times you guys offer free resources to clients and to people that are listening to this podcast. Can you put together a checklist for the ladies that they can get from you, whether they email in or they can go to the website and download it, however you put it together? Can you get a checklist together for them for things that they need to make sure that they are the questions that they need to be asking, either their financial professional or maybe if they are married, questions they need to ask their husband to see where they're at so they can come and have this conversation with you? Can we get a resource like that for them?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's no reason, everybody should be aware of everything. How you want to deal with it's a different issue. But, my wife knows everything we're doing. Just because I deal with it doesn't mean she doesn't know what it is,
Yeah.
And I think you just got to be aware of that. And then, what happens if one of you is no longer there? How you going to address that? So sure, I can put a list together of what I think is the most important thing, especially for the women, and we'll put that up on our website.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. All right, Jim, any closing thoughts for today?
Just, like I said, we welcome everybody at our firm. We'd love to talk to everybody. It's one of those things, you don't know what you don't know. We don't bite, and it's a free phone call. We still take phone calls. We still talk to you and see if there's any reason to continue the conversation. That's really what it's about. You got a question, we can easily answer it. We'll just answer it for you. If there's more there, we'd love to help you.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and I will say this. Look, I love my wife. Jim knows that. We're very different people. If I take my car to go get detailed, she insists that I clean it before I take it. I'm not sure why. I'm having them detail it. I'm having them clean it, but she doesn't want it to go there dirty. So understand that you don't have to clean up your finances. You don't have to, get all your ducks in a row before you go see Jim, because the fact is that we all have things in our closet. We all have these things that we're just not sure about. It's okay. That's what he's going to answer those questions. That's why he's going to put that list together of things that are going to make you think. Please don't hesitate and don't think that you have to clean things up before you go, because they can help you do that. And it's much easier. They're really good at it. So, Jim,
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for the podcast today. I'm always learning something, and I think this is a great discussion. I think women need to get more involved because of the fact that for so long they've just been ignored. And I know that your firm does a great job of involving them, and I want to see that continue. So thank you for the podcast. And, of course, for you, the listening audience, thank you for tuning in and listening to the Well-Rounded Retirement Podcast with Jim Donewald and John Glowaz. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Jim and John come out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. Again, thanks so much for listening today. For everyone at CRIS Financial, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Well-Rounded Retirement Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of CRIS Financial. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.